Chapter 1: The Awakening of the Sands. Beneath the scorching sun and the shifting dunes of the Sahara, a mystery rests in silence, half buried in time, half lost in myth. The land we now call Egypt, carved by the eternal flow of the Nile, was once home to one of the most enigmatic civilizations ever to emerge on Earth. The ancient Egyptians built temples that seemed to defy time, monuments that pierced the sky, and beliefs that continue to echo across the millennia. But there is a question, persistent and whispering from beneath the sand. Did they do it alone? Or did someone or something walk beside them in that distant past? Mainstream archaeology explains the rise of Egyptian civilization through the development of agriculture, the centralization of power, and the ingenuity of early humans. And yet, something about Egypt does not fit neatly into this linear path of evolution. From its sudden appearance as a fully formed, literate, mathematically advanced society to the sheer perfection of its earliest architecture, Egypt's beginnings seem less like a progression and more like an explosion, a civilization birthed in brilliance rather than built through centuries of trial and error. The question is not just how the Egyptians did what they did, but why their very first steps were so remarkably advanced. Long before the age of the pyramids, ancient texts speak of a time called Zep Tepi, the first time. According to Egyptian mythology, this was an age when gods walked among men, when the divine ruled directly upon the earth. In this primordial era, the god Osiris descended to bring order to chaos, and Thoth, the god of wisdom, bestowed writing and knowledge to humanity. But were these merely symbolic tales crafted to explain the origins of culture? Or were they distorted memories of real events passed down in allegory, hinting at something or someone who arrived from beyond? The gods of Egypt were not abstract. They were described in detail, given names, families, hierarchies, and even tasks. Many were depicted with animal features, but others appeared humanoid, tall, powerful, radiant beings whose origins were always traced back to the sky. The ancients did not say their gods were metaphors. They believed these beings had physical presence, technology, and knowledge beyond human comprehension. Could these stories represent ancient encounters with beings from another world? Visitors who came not to conquer, but to instruct? The Nile Valley is one of the most continuously inhabited regions on Earth. Yet even the earliest archaeological layers reveal complex ceremonial structures, astronomical alignments, and inexplicable engineering capabilities. It is as if someone pressed a fast-forward button on humanity's development. The first dynasties emerged already adorned with crowns of gold, holding scepters, and organizing vast armies, irrigation systems, and priesthoods. Where did the sudden wisdom come from? And why does it seem to appear as a complete package, as if gifted from the very beginning? Some researchers believe the answer lies not in the tools found buried in the earth, but in the sky above. Ancient structures across Egypt are aligned with astonishing precision to celestial bodies. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, aligns almost perfectly with the cardinal points and appears to mirror the stars of Orion's belt. Why would such a civilization, at the dawn of recorded history, be so obsessed with the stars? Were they simply fascinated? Or were they remembering something crucial? Something that came from those very constellations? It is here, at this junction between stone and starlight, where the debate between mainstream history and alternative theories begins to sharpen. Mainstream scholars maintain that the achievements of ancient Egypt can be explained through human innovation, slow progress, and the natural curiosity of early civilizations. But those who question the official narrative ask a deeper question. If we had forgotten an earlier chapter of human history, how would we even know? What if the monuments of Egypt are not the beginning of civilization, but a reminder of a far older world, one that perished and was partially restored? From the moment Napoleon's soldiers first laid eyes on the Rosetta Stone, scholars have tried to decode the past. And yet, even with decades of study, many aspects of Egyptian life remain shrouded in mystery. The techniques used to transport and lift multi-ton granite blocks carved to exact tolerances remain uncertain. The formulas behind ancient pigments, still vivid today, remain only partially understood. How did these people, with primitive tools according to modern standards, create works that still baffle modern engineers? Perhaps the answer lies in a convergence of two realities. What if the Egyptians were indeed brilliant humans, but with guidance, subtle or direct, by beings who were not? Civilizations often speak of golden ages, of wisdom handed down from the stars. The Dogon people of Mali, far to the southwest, claim knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. Knowledge they say was given to them by beings from that star system. Could similar events have happened in Egypt, but left behind in stone instead of story? The awakening of the sands is not merely a tale of a lost kingdom. It is the first step in questioning the foundations of history itself. If the earliest chapters of Egypt are veiled in myth, then perhaps those myths are keys, waiting to unlock a version of history in which we are not alone, in which human evolution was watched, shaped, and maybe even accelerated by others. In this version of history, the gods of Egypt were more than deities. They were emissaries. And the monuments we marvel at today are not only tombs or temples, but messages written in stone, left behind by visitors who once walked among men and whose footprints remain, half buried beneath the ever-shifting sands of time.
Chapter 2. The Pyramids and the Geometry of the Sky. Rising from the golden sands of the Giza Plateau, the pyramids stand like sentinels, guarding a forgotten truth. Among them, the Great Pyramid of Khufu reigns supreme, a structure of such scale, precision, and mystery that even today it defies simple explanation. Built from over 2 million limestone and granite blocks, each weighing several tons, aligned with stunning accuracy to the cardinal directions, and positioned in relation to celestial bodies, this monument has sparked awe for millennia. The question persists not just in how it was constructed, but why such mathematical and astronomical complexity was necessary. Could these massive stone monuments be more than tombs? Could they be encoded messages, geometric prayers etched into Earth's surface, visible even from the sky? The Great Pyramid is not merely an architectural wonder, it is a statement. Every aspect of its design is intentional. Its base is nearly perfectly square, with sides that deviate less than a fraction of a degree from true north, south, east, and west. Its dimensions incorporate the mathematical constant pi and the golden ratio, both concepts supposedly unknown to the ancient Egyptians, yet present in the pyramid's form. The height of the Great Pyramid, when multiplied by a specific factor, reflects the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Its perimeter divided by its height yields a number astonishingly close to 2 pi, connecting the base to a perfect circle. How did a civilization without computers or high-level mathematics embed these constants into stone structures over 4,000 years ago? And then there is the alignment to the stars. The 3 pyramids of Giza mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt, tilted at an angle that matches the celestial configuration as it appeared in the sky around 10,500 BCE, a date that far predates the official timeline of Egyptian civilization. The shaft in the king's chamber points not arbitrarily, but directly toward Orion at the time of construction. To the ancient Egyptians, Orion represented Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, symbolized Isis, his divine consort. This wasn't mythology alone. It was a celestial map etched into architecture, guiding souls towards the stars they believed were their origin. Were the pyramids intended to be stargates for the pharaoh's spirit, or were they modeled after something witnessed, perhaps a cosmic alignment remembered across generations? Mainstream archaeology maintains that the pyramids were funerary structures, massive tombs for kings who claimed divine authority. But no mummy has ever been discovered inside the Great Pyramid. No hieroglyphs decorate its inner chambers. No inscriptions name its builder definitively. It stands silent and unmarked, as though it was never intended for burial at all. Could it have served a different purpose, one lost to time? Some researchers suggest it may have been an energy device, utilizing the conductive properties of granite and the insulating nature of limestone, possibly in concert with underground water flows. While speculative, such theories raise questions about whether the pyramid's function extended beyond death, perhaps into realms of energy, resonance, or even communication. The placement of the Giza pyramids is also far from random. They are situated along a specific latitude, just under 30 degrees north, an area associated with significant electromagnetic activity. Their location relative to other sacred sites around the world reveal mathematical harmonics and geodetic alignments that suggest a knowledge of Earth's curvature and energy grid. Some theorists believe the pyramids form part of a global network, nodes on an ancient planetary system built to harness or transmit subtle energies. The idea seems fantastical until one confronts the sheer perfection of the construction and its inescapable correlation to celestial phenomena. Who possessed such knowledge, and why would they encode it in stone? Adding to the enigma is the incredible precision of construction. The joints between the massive blocks are so tight that not even a razor blade can fit between them. The blocks themselves were transported from quarries miles away, some from Aswan, over 800 kilometers to the south. How were they moved, shaped, and placed without modern machinery? The answer often given is ramps, but no physical evidence of such ramps exist on a scale necessary for this task. Furthermore, the logistics of lifting stones weighing up to 80 tons to the upper levels of the pyramid remain a puzzle. Some have proposed lost technologies. Others suggest the use of sound frequencies or anti-gravitational techniques described metaphorically in ancient texts. While these ideas challenge accepted science, they attempt to address what traditional explanations leave unanswered. Inside the pyramid, the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, and the Queen's Chamber form a configuration that suggests more than simple passageways. Acoustic studies show that the King's Chamber resonates at a frequency of 440 Hz, the same frequency modern instruments use to tune music. The granite box inside this chamber also responds to specific vibrations. Was the pyramid built to amplify, focus, or transform sound? Ancient priests spoke of harmonic rituals and vibrational energies used for healing, communication, and spiritual elevation. Could the pyramid have been a spiritual or energetic machine as much as a physical one? It is also notable that similar pyramid structures exist across the globe, in Mesoamerica, in China, in Sudan, and even in the submerged ruins of Japan. Though cultures separated by oceans and millennia, they all built massive, stepped or smooth-sided pyramids aligned to the stars. Could there have been a global exchange of knowledge in the deep past? Or perhaps a shared origin, a forgotten culture or influence that left its mark on all continents? If so, the pyramids of Egypt may not stand alone, but as part of a lost system of global architecture rooted in the sky. The ancient Egyptians themselves never claimed to have invented this knowledge. Their writings often say it was inherited or rediscovered. The earliest and most precise monuments, like the Great Pyramid, predate later, cruder imitations. This reverses the expected trajectory of architectural progress. The further back we go in Egypt, the more advanced the construction becomes. What if, instead of evolving upwards, civilization in Egypt began at a peak, one built by beings who arrived with knowledge already in hand? The geometry of the sky is not just carved into stone, it is woven into the very fabric of Egyptian spirituality and science. They believed to understand the heavens was to understand the divine. The pyramid, therefore, may not be a tomb, but a bridge between earth and sky, a map of the cosmos rendered in massive scale, pointing us towards a deeper truth. Whether it was built by human hands alone or with help from others who came from among the stars, remains a question open to interpretation. But one thing is certain: those who designed it were not merely builders. They were astronomers, mathematicians, philosophers, and possibly messengers. If we listen carefully, we may hear what they tried to tell us, not through words, but through form, light, and alignment. A message from an ancient past, or perhaps from the future we have yet to remember. And it all begins with a monument that refuses to be forgotten, rising from the sands, aligned to the stars, whispering secrets into the silence of time.
Chapter 3: Technologies of the Impossible. Throughout the ancient world, ruins stand as evidence of a forgotten genius. None, however, challenge modern understanding quite like those found in Egypt. The massive stones of its temples, obelisks, and pyramids were not only quarried and transported over vast distances, but shaped with such extraordinary precision that modern tools would struggle to replicate their exactitude. These were not rough constructions, improvised by trial and error. They were feats of engineering far ahead of their time. The deeper we examine the methods supposedly used by the ancient Egyptians, the more we find ourselves at a crossroads between history and mystery. Was this brilliance purely human, or did it involve techniques, machines, or understandings that we no longer possess? When visitors walk through the ruins of Karnak or stand beneath the towering columns of Luxor, they often marvel at the scale. But it is the fine detail, the polish of the stone, the uniformity of angles, the perfect symmetry that leaves engineers and stonemasons speechless. Granite statues over 20 feet tall sit perfectly balanced, with surfaces so smooth they reflect light like glass. How did ancient workers achieve this level of refinement using only copper chisels and stone hammers, as claimed by orthodox archaeology? Copper is far softer than granite. Even after hours of labor, it barely scratches the surface. Experimental reconstructions using these tools have failed to reproduce the precision found at ancient sites. This raises the possibility that the Egyptians either possessed a now lost method of working stone, or that we are misinterpreting the true nature of their tools and techniques. One of the most puzzling artifacts comes from the Serapeum of Saqqara, an underground network of tunnels housing massive stone boxes made from solid granite. Each box weighs over 70 tons, with perfectly flat interiors and corners that form exact 90-degree angles. The lids alone weigh several tons and fit the boxes so seamlessly that even a sheet of paper cannot pass between them. These were not casual constructions. They required an understanding of geometry and an ability to control large-scale precision. Yet no inscriptions indicate their makers. No contemporary records explain their purpose. Even today, moving such monoliths into narrow underground chambers would require sophisticated cranes and planning. The idea that a civilization over 3,000 years ago accomplished this with sleds and manpower alone seems increasingly implausible. Drilling marks found on ancient stones add another layer to the enigma. At Abu Sir and Giza, circular striations appear on the interior surfaces of drilled holes, marks resembling those left by modern core drills. These patterns suggest the use of rotary motion under constant pressure, something far beyond the capabilities of copper drills and sand-based abrasives. Some cores, preserved in museums, display helical grooves that indicate a rapid, consistent cutting rate, as if a powered device bored into the stone. If this is true, it would imply the use of some form of mechanical or even electrical technology. Were the Egyptians using advanced machines lost to time? Or were these remnants of an even earlier civilization whose tools and knowledge did not survive the ages? Equally mysterious are the enormous obelisks carved from single blocks of granite, such as the unfinished obelisk in Aswan. Had it been completed, it would have stood nearly 140 feet tall and weighed over 1,000 tons. The obelisk lies in a quarry, partially separated from the bedrock, abandoned after a crack appeared during carving.
Yet the method used to carve it remains a puzzle. The ancient workers had no steel tools, no dynamite, no cranes. Still, they shaped and smoothed the granite with flawless consistency. How did they manage to cut so deeply and evenly into solid rock? The traditional theory of pounding with dolerite balls has never been convincingly demonstrated on such a scale. Even more strangely, some cuts appear to curve or change direction mid-stroke, suggesting a tool with flexibility or control that cannot be explained by handheld stone hammers. In recent years, high-resolution 3D scans of Egyptian artifacts have revealed tolerances so tight they rival modern machine fabrication. The statues of Ramses II, for instance, are symmetrical to within fractions of a millimeter. The placement of eyes, ears, and facial features follow mathematical ratios observed in industrial design today. Who was applying these standards of perfection? Were ancient artisans simply that skilled, or were they guided by templates and devices that no longer exist? Some theorists propose that sound, resonance, may have been used to manipulate matter. Legends abound of priests chanting or using instruments to lift stones or alter their structure. While this seems like myth, research into acoustic levitation and vibration-induced plasticity has shown that sound waves can, under the right conditions, influence physical matter. Could ancient Egypt have possessed an intuitive, spiritualized understanding of sound as a force of creation and transformation? Adding to the mystery are the batteries of Baghdad, the Antikythera mechanism of Greece, and other anomalies from antiquity that hint at a wider global knowledge of mechanical or electrical science long before its supposed invention. If such devices could exist elsewhere, why not in Egypt, the civilization most closely associated with celestial wisdom and divine order? Some go further, suggesting that knowledge was passed down from a pre-Diluvian civilization, one that perished in a global cataclysm, but whose survivors preserved fragments of advanced understanding. These survivors, arriving in early Egypt, may have been remembered as gods or sages. Their knowledge, once practical and technological, might have been mythologized into spiritual teachings over the generations. The idea that Egypt was the inheritor, rather than the originator of its greatest feats, changes the entire historical narrative. From the earliest dynasties, we see evidence not of gradual development, but sudden brilliance, mathematical, architectural, and astronomical. The Great Pyramid, built early in Egypt's Old Kingdom, stands unrivaled by anything built later. Shouldn't the skills have improved over time, not declined? This inversion suggests that something was lost, a knowledge that either was not passed on or that slowly faded as the true meaning behind the structures became ceremonial rather than functional. In temple reliefs and wall carvings, we see images of what appeared to be complex devices, serpentine coils, bulbous shapes emitting light, objects that some interpret as electrical apparatus. Mainstream scholars call them symbolic or allegorical, but the resemblance to modern instruments is hard to dismiss entirely. The so-called dendera light, for example, shows a scene where a figure holds a large object resembling a modern lamp, connected by a cord to what looks like a generator. Is this coincidence or memory encoded in religious iconography? Could some temples have functioned as energy centers, places of healing, resonance, or even power generation? The technologies of the impossible challenge our assumptions about progress. They invite us to reconsider the linear view of history and instead explore the idea that knowledge moves in cycles, discovered, lost, rediscovered. If we accept that possibility, then ancient Egypt may represent not just the dawn of civilization, but a remnant of a much older world, a lighthouse flickering at the edge of memory, elucidating a time when humans, or those who walked among them, could shape stone with precision, move matter with ease, and leave behind monuments not just to power, but to purpose. In these silent stones and forgotten methods, the past whispers of something greater, something not yet fully remembered. Perhaps it is not a question of whether ancient Egypt had advanced technology, but whether we are ready to recognize the evidence that has been before us all along.
Chapter 4. The Gods Descend from the Sky. In the heart of ancient Egypt's beliefs lies a central conviction. The gods were not distant abstractions, but tangible beings who walked among men. The stories etched into stone and preserved in papyri are not merely allegories or religious metaphors. To the ancient Egyptians, the divine was real, embodied, and present. Their gods were rulers, guides, warriors, teachers, and many of them came from the sky. This recurring theme, found not only in Egypt but across many ancient cultures, suggests more than spiritual mythology. It points to a possibility, both exhilarating and unsettling, that the gods of old were not born of imagination, but of encounter. The earliest Egyptian texts describe a time called Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods lived on earth. They ruled not from the heavens, but physically, from cities built along the Nile. Osiris, the bringer of civilization, ruled in peace until his murder by his brother Set. Isis, his consort, used magic and science to resurrect him long enough to conceive Horus. Thoth, the god of wisdom, created language and measured the movement of stars. These were not distant myths, but detailed accounts of figures with families, hierarchies, tools, and knowledge far beyond that of ordinary humans. Their descriptions were consistent, specific, and elaborate. What if they were not just symbols? What if they were real beings, advanced visitors remembered as gods? In nearly every depiction, the gods are associated with the sky. Ra sails across the heavens in a solar bark, entering the underworld at night and emerging reborn at dawn. Nut, the sky goddess, arches over the earth, swallowing the sun each evening and birthing it anew each morning. The gods come from celestial realms, and when they leave, they return to them. This persistent association with the stars, with flight, and with cycles of descent and return invites deeper interpretation. To a society without airplanes or rockets, how would visitors from the sky appear? Would they not be seen as divine? Would their arrival in radiant craft, their control of energy and matter, not be recorded as miraculous? Consider the term Neteru, used by the Egyptians to refer to their gods. It is often translated simply as gods, but its true meaning is more complex. Some scholars argue it refers to watchers, guardians, or forces of nature, beings who operate beyond normal human understanding. They possessed technologies that seemed magical, healing capabilities that defied mortality, and knowledge of the heavens so precise that it still challenges modern astronomy. If they were merely fictional, why such consistency in their traits across centuries of Egyptian history? Why such reverence, precision, and fear? Temple walls in Abydos and Dendera show intriguing imagery. In some, the gods are shown holding devices, symbols, or tools that appear unfamiliar yet deliberate in form. In others, beings arrive in what seem to be boats, vehicles crossing not only the Nile, but also the sky. If these were simply metaphors for solar motion, why the mechanical detail? Why the repeated emphasis on arrival, departure, and return? Myths from other cultures echo these themes. The Sumerian Anunnaki descended from the heavens. The Hopis speak of sky people. The Dogon of Mali describe beings from the star Sirius bringing cosmic knowledge. Egypt fits into this pattern not as an exception, but as part of a global memory, one that may reflect ancient contact. The divine figures in Egyptian myth often possess physical features distinct from humanity. The elongated skulls of Akhenaten's royal family, the towering forms of the gods, and the hybrid appearances, part human, part animal, might suggest symbolic representation, or they could hint at an actual difference in biology. The gods were said to be stronger, wiser, longer lived. They were not immortal in the absolute sense, but their lifespan dwarfed that of mortals. They required sustenance, rest, and even healing.
Some were said to have left relics or objects of power behind, often hidden in tombs or temples and protected by curses or rituals. If these were mere stories, why the consistency in secrecy and reverence? There is also the matter of initiation. Egyptian priests underwent rigorous training, often including isolation, fasting, and exposure to harmonic frequencies. These rituals were said to open perception, to allow communication with the Neteru. In some accounts, contact with these beings occurred not through worship, but through altered states of consciousness, visions, dreams, and direct encounters. Were these spiritual practices or protocols for interdimensional contact? The line between metaphysical and technological blurs when one considers that sufficiently advanced technology may appear as magic to less developed societies. What was divine could simply have been incomprehensible. Hieroglyphics often depict the gods holding Ankh symbols, staves, or scepters that emit rays or light. These are always shown in active poses, as if channeling energy. The gods wore elaborate headdresses, sometimes circular or disc-shaped, possibly representing devices rather than ornaments. Some depictions show beings emerging from what looked like domes or capsules. If we consider the possibility of ancient extraterrestrial contact, then these images might be evidence, not conclusive, but suggestive, of technological beings whose interactions were later woven into the spiritual fabric of Egyptian culture. The priests and pharaohs did not claim to be gods themselves, at least not in origin. Rather, they said they ruled in the name of the gods, as chosen or enlightened intermediaries. The divine right to rule was not inherited alone, it was received from beings of greater wisdom. Some kings, like Tutmosis III, recorded visions in which he was granted favor by celestial beings. Akhenaten claimed that he alone understood the will of Aten, the solar disk. Were these expressions of religious fervor or memories of real encounters with otherworldly intelligences? As time passed, the gods of Egypt withdrew. Their temples crumbled, their symbols became obscure, and their names were absorbed into new pantheons or erased. But their memory endured. The myths remained, passed down through generations, distorted perhaps, but never forgotten. The gods came from the sky. They brought light, knowledge, and order. Then, for unknown reasons, they left, or perhaps retreated beyond the veil of perception, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready once again. The idea that ancient gods were visitors from elsewhere is not new. It has existed at the edges of science, religion, and speculation for centuries. But Egypt, with its grandeur, its silence, and its persistent gaze toward the heavens, holds the clues with a rare clarity. The monuments still point to the stars. The texts still speak of celestial origins. And the question lingers in every corridor of every ancient temple. Who were the gods of Egypt? If they came from the sky, as their own people believed, then perhaps the past holds not just history, but the evidence of an encounter that reshaped the course of civilization.
Chapter 5. Akhenaten, the Sun Pharaoh. Among all the pharaohs who ruled over ancient Egypt, one stands apart, not for military conquests or monumental architecture, but for a spiritual revolution that defied the gods, rewrote tradition, and cast a long, unsettling shadow over history. His name was Akhenaten. He rose to power during the 18th dynasty, in a time of great wealth and religious orthodoxy. Yet, instead of continuing the practices of his ancestors, Akhenaten shattered them. He declared the old gods obsolete, closed temples, erased centuries of worship, and introduced a singular devotion to one entity, the Aten, a radiant solar disk that he claimed as the sole true divine force. But Akhenaten was not only a religious reformer. His strange appearance, radical ideas, and isolation from the priesthood have led some to wonder whether his transformation was inspired by more than earthly revelation. Was Akhenaten truly a visionary, Or was he something else entirely? An emissary, a hybrid, or even a witness to contact with beings beyond our world? The artistic depictions of Akhenaten are unlike any other in Egyptian history. Where earlier pharaohs were portrayed with idealized strength and symmetry, Akhenaten was shown with an elongated skull, narrow shoulders, wide hips, and spindly limbs. His face is long and feminine, his belly rounded, his chest curved. These features defy the conventions of Egyptian art and suggest a figure that is either intentionally symbolic or physically different in some fundamental way. Some scholars argue this was a stylistic break meant to emphasize the divine uniqueness of the pharaoh. Others point to possible genetic disorders. But there are those who suggest another possibility, that Akhenaten's appearance reflects an actual inherited difference, one perhaps linked to the so-called gods he revered. Akhenaten's monotheism was not merely theological, it was cosmological. The Aten was not personified as a human or animal god, but as a disk of radiant energy. Rays extended from the Aten like fingers, each ending in a hand offering the Ankh, the symbol of life. This depiction resembles more a technological or cosmic phenomenon than a traditional deity. Akhenaten described the Aten as the creator, the giver of light, warmth, and breath. In his hymns, he praises the Aten not with fear or supplication, but with intimate wonder, as if describing a living presence he had encountered directly. Could the Aten represent more than the sun? Could it be a metaphor for a craft, a presence, or an intelligence that manifested through light? Ancient astronaut theorists have long speculated that the Aten might symbolize a vehicle or being of radiant energy, something Akhenaten either saw or communicated with, and that so deeply affected him, he changed the entire course of Egyptian religion to reflect it. The city Akhenaten built, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, was a complete break from the past. Situated away from the established centers of Egyptian power, it was designed to serve not the gods of Thebes, but the Aten alone. The city's layout aligned with the rising sun, its temples open to the sky, devoid of roofs or idols. This was a religion of direct communion, of light and space, and of celestial observation. The entire capital functioned almost like an observatory, perhaps even a staging ground for some deeper ritual or connection. Within the city, Akhenaten surrounded himself with a small circle of loyalists. He removed the powerful Amun priesthood from their temples, stripped them of influence, and centralized worship entirely under his rule. This isolation, this cleansing of tradition, feels less like reform and more like preparation, as if Akhenaten was creating sacred ground for something or someone to return. Even the royal family under Akhenaten was portrayed in ways never before seen. His wife, Nefertiti, was shown as an equal, sometimes even leading rituals. His daughters were given unprecedented prominence, but the entire family bore the same strange features: elongated skulls, narrow limbs, and sloping foreheads. These depictions have led to endless speculation. Were they artistic metaphors, stylized representations of divine favor, or evidence of a bloodline touched by something unearthly? Genetic studies on mummies believed to be related to Akhenaten show anomalies, unusual cranial shapes and DNA markers that challenge traditional population models. While not proof of extraterrestrial origin, they do raise questions about the uniqueness of this lineage and its possible connection to ancient myths of sky gods and divine descent. Akhenaten's reign did not last. After 17 years, he died, suddenly and mysteriously. His successor, the boy king Tutankhaten, changed his name to Tutankhamun, restored the old gods,
abandoned Amarna, and re-established the Amun priesthood. Akhenaten's statues were smashed, his name chiseled from monuments, and his legacy condemned as heresy. Yet the effort to erase him was so thorough that it only drew more attention. Why did the priests and rulers go to such lengths to bury his memory? Was it fear? Fear that his teachings held dangerous truth? Or was it shame, a rejection of a past they could not understand? Today, Akhenaten stands as one of the most enigmatic figures in ancient history. His life defies easy explanation. He may have been a spiritual revolutionary ahead of his time, a madman obsessed with light, or the last remnant of a fading memory, one that linked kings to the stars. His worship of the Aten, his city of solar alignment, his family's unusual appearance, and the complete break from tradition all suggest a man touched by something far beyond political ambition. Whether he was chosen, changed, or simply inspired, Akhenaten's legacy continues to provoke questions about the true nature of divine experience in the ancient world. What if Akhenaten's Aten was not a god, but a messenger? What if his hymns were not poetry, but testimony? And what if his vision was not madness, but memory, a recollection of contact with those who once came from above and walked among men? In the figure of Akhenaten, the boundary between myth and history blurs. The light he followed may have been the sun, or it may have been something else entirely, still burning just beyond the veil of time, waiting to be remembered.
Chapter 6: The Sphinx and the Secrets Beneath. Silent and unmoving, the great Sphinx of Giza gazes eternally eastward toward the rising sun. Carved from a single mass of limestone, its lion's body and human face have endured the scorching winds and shifting sands for thousands of years. It is the oldest known monumental sculpture in Egypt and perhaps the most mysterious. Though it stands beside the Great Pyramids, it is older than any of the inscriptions that surround it. No texts from the time of its creation have ever been found. No definitive record of its construction exists. The Sphinx does not speak, and yet it whispers volumes through its weathered features, inviting endless speculation. What is the true age of this colossal guardian? Who built it and why? And more importantly, what lies beneath? Mainstream Egyptology attributes the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafre, who ruled during the 4th dynasty around 2500 BCE. The conventional theory suggests the face of the Sphinx resembles Khafre's likeness and that it was carved to guard his pyramid complex. Yet this theory rests on limited evidence, primarily stylistic interpretation and proximity. No inscription connects Khafre to the Sphinx. No workers' graffiti, no ceremonial texts, no foundation stones mark his authorship. In contrast, statues of pharaohs throughout Egypt are almost always inscribed with names, titles, and prayers. The Sphinx stands alone, nameless and unclaimed. That silence invites a more ancient mystery. In the 1990s, a team of geologists led by Dr. Robert Schoch examined the weathering patterns on the Sphinx and made a startling observation. The deep vertical erosion on its flanks was not caused by wind-blown sand, as previously assumed, but by sustained rainfall. Egypt's arid desert climate has not experienced the necessary rainfall to cause such erosion for over 7,000 years. If this analysis is correct, then the Sphinx predates the dynastic period by thousands of years, perhaps dating back to 10,000 BCE or earlier when the region saw a wetter, more temperate climate. This places the monument in a time before any known civilization existed on Earth. If the Sphinx is truly that old, then it raises a profound question. Who built it? The idea that the Sphinx may have originated in a lost civilization predating the pharaohs echoes ancient legends. The Greeks believed the Sphinx was a creature of riddles, guarding hidden knowledge. Egyptian mythology speaks of Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods walked the earth and established the foundations of the world. The Sphinx may have been carved not to honor a mortal ruler,
but to commemorate that forgotten era. Its body, lion-shaped and massive, may symbolize power, eternity, and guardianship. Its face, possibly recarved in later times, may have once looked very different. If it originally bore the visage of a non-human being or an older entity, it might have been altered to fit a new regime, rewriting not just history, but memory itself. But the true secrets of the Sphinx may lie beneath its paws. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by independent researchers and even confirmed by some Egyptian authorities have revealed the presence of rectangular cavities beneath and around the monument, chambers or hollows cut into the bedrock, sealed and unexplored. One such anomaly lies directly between the Sphinx's forepaws. Some believe this is the legendary Hall of Records, a repository of knowledge said to contain the lost wisdom of Atlantis, or the survivors of a global cataclysm. Edgar Cayce famously predicted that this chamber would be discovered before the end of the 20th century and would reveal the true origins of human civilization. While no official excavation has confirmed the contents of these anomalies, their presence remains both documented and unexplained. The idea of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx has always stirred controversy. Egyptian authorities have traditionally denied access to independent researchers, citing preservation concerns, but the lack of transparency has only fueled speculation. What could be so dangerous or so significant as to warrant such secrecy? Could ancient texts, devices, or artifacts lie buried beneath the stone paws, remnants not just of Egypt's lost past, but of an entirely forgotten epoch in human history? If the chamber is real, and if it contains evidence of a civilization advanced enough to leave behind such a monument, it would upend everything we believe about our past. The positioning of the Sphinx also hints at astronomical significance. It faces due east, aligned perfectly with the rising sun at the spring equinox. Some researchers propose that this orientation connects it not only to the solar calendar, but to a much larger celestial cycle, the precession of the equinoxes. Around 10,500 BCE, the constellation Leo, the lion, would have risen on the horizon at dawn in March, directly aligned with the Sphinx's gaze. Was this monument designed to mirror the stars, to act as a cosmic clock marking the beginning of a new age? If so, its builders not only possessed advanced engineering, but a profound understanding of astronomy and time cycles spanning tens of thousands of years. The Sphinx is more than stone. It is a symbol, a guardian, and possibly a warning. Its eroded surface speaks of age far beyond our written records. Its silent watchfulness suggests knowledge that outlived its creators. Its hidden chambers may contain the keys to understanding not only ancient Egypt, but the roots of civilization itself. And its face, whether pharaonic, divine, or altered, continues to challenge our assumptions. Perhaps we have not asked the right questions. Perhaps the answers have always been there, waiting in the bedrock, sealed beneath the gaze of the world's oldest riddle. If the Sphinx does guard the truth of our forgotten origins, then its patience has been vast. It has watched the rise and fall of empires, the drift of stars, the silence of memory, and it waits still beneath the sun, beneath the sand, for us to remember what we once knew.
Chapter 7. The Book of the Dead and the Star Portals. The ancient Egyptians viewed death not as an end, but as a passage, a complex journey through unseen realms governed by divine laws and cosmic forces. Central to this vision was the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells, hymns, and incantations designed to guide the soul, the Ba, through the treacherous pathways of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, and into the presence of the gods. But what if this was more than symbolic poetry? What if the Book of the Dead encoded real processes, not just spiritual metaphors, but literal mechanisms for transcending dimensions? The Duat was not a chaotic hell as imagined in later religions. It was a structured realm, governed by celestial order, where each step of the soul's journey corresponded to specific phases, encounters, and trials. The deceased would face gates guarded by supernatural entities, answer complex questions, and undergo the weighing of the heart, where the organ was balanced against the feather of Ma'at, truth and cosmic balance. The ultimate goal was to reach the field of reeds, a paradisiacal mirror of earth, and become one with the divine. But what if this was more than symbolic poetry? What if the Book of the Dead encoded real processes, not just spiritual metaphors, but literal mechanisms for transcending dimensions? Some passages of the Book of the Dead mention doors of the sky, ladders to the stars, and light tunnels leading to the realm of Ra. These phrases have often been dismissed as poetic flourishes, yet strikingly similar descriptions appear in reports of near-death experiences and ancient texts from entirely different cultures. In the pyramid texts, predecessors to the Book of the Dead, we find incantations designed to launch the king into the sky, where he becomes a star and joins the company of the gods. This recurring theme of a central ascent raises profound questions. Were the Egyptians attempting to describe a literal departure from the physical plane? The alignment of pyramids with Orion's belt, the orientation of tombs towards specific constellations, and the repeated use of astral language in funerary texts suggests an obsession with the stars not merely as symbolic heavens, but as destinations. The Duat, in some interpretations, was mapped not below the earth, but among the constellations, particularly those associated with Osiris in the afterlife. Could the Book of the Dead be more than a metaphysical guide? Could it have encoded a system of consciousness navigation, an ancient science of soul travel or dimensional transition? Several alternative historians propose that the elaborate Egyptian rituals were not just for the dead, but for preparing the living elite to transcend the human condition. The complex burial rites, the detailed spells, the sarcophagi adorned with star maps and cosmic symbols, all point to a sophisticated understanding of something beyond mere religion. Initiates of the priesthood may have been trained to use sound, symbol, and geometry not just for ceremony, but to activate altered states of consciousness, perhaps even to interact with interdimensional intelligences or traverse non-physical realities. In this view, the sarcophagus was not just a coffin, but a device, an interface between worlds. Some scholars of esoteric traditions point to spell 144 of the Book of the Dead, which lists the names and guardians of 21 gates. Each gate requires specific words of power to pass. This pattern echoes the idea of controlled access to different planes or frequencies of reality. Just as a password or key grants access to encrypted information, the ancient Egyptians may have believed that precise vibrational codes, intoned through ritual, could unlock star portals hidden in the fabric of space-time. Even more curious are the parallels between the Egyptian afterlife journey and modern theories in quantum physics and multidimensional travel. Concepts such as wormholes, parallel universes, and higher dimensional space are now taken seriously in cutting-edge scientific circles. The idea that consciousness can influence or even travel between these realms is no longer confined to mysticism. Could the Egyptians, through unknown means or forgotten knowledge, have understood and perhaps accessed these realities? Artifacts such as the Djed pillar, often interpreted as a symbol of stability, may also represent a kind of technological or energetic device. The Djed's resemblance to Tesla coils or energy conductors has led to speculate that it symbolized more than spiritual support. It might have been part of an energy system, perhaps connected to the Great Pyramid itself. Some engineers and researchers have theorized that the pyramid functioned not merely as a tomb, but as a resonator or energy transmitter, possibly designed to affect the consciousness of the initiate, opening what the Egyptians called the Seket Aru, the fields of blessedness beyond the veil of mortal life. The Book of the Dead speaks repeatedly of becoming light, becoming the stars, and taking one's place in the sky.
These are not vague spiritual metaphors if taken in the context of a society that built structures aligned to celestial phenomena with impossible precision, and whose text described the journey of the soul as a calculated process through gates, stars, and realms of judgment and rebirth. And now, as modern science and ancient mysticism begin to intersect, the sands of time stir again. The question the Egyptians posed thousands of years ago still echoes through the corridors of the Great Pyramid and the painted tombs of the Valley of the Kings. Is death an end or a doorway? And if it is a doorway, where does it truly lead?
Chapter 8. The Zodiac of Dendera. Beneath the ceiling of the Hathor Temple in Dendera lies one of the most enigmatic relics of ancient Egypt, the Dendera Zodiac. Carved in bas-relief on a circular stone panel, this celestial diagram has captivated scholars, astronomers, and mystics alike. Its presence challenges conventional assumptions about Egyptian astronomy and cosmology, presenting a sophisticated, intricate understanding of the heavens far beyond what mainstream Egyptology once believed possible. What at first glance appears to be an ornate representation of constellations may, upon closer analysis, reveal something far more profound: a celestial code, an astronomical archive, or even a star map for interstellar navigation. The Dendera zodiac depicts a fusion of Egyptian and Greco-Roman astronomical symbolism, with constellations such as Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio clearly identifiable, yet interpreted through an ancient Egyptian lens. Surrounding these are deities, animals, and symbols moving across the circular plane in a dynamic, deliberate composition. The central figures, aligned with key celestial bodies, suggest a profound understanding of precession, solstices, and celestial cycles. Some researchers argue that the zodiac of Dendera records specific planetary alignments and eclipses that allow it to be dated with remarkable accuracy. Others, more controversially, suggest it encodes knowledge of astronomical phenomena that should have been beyond the reach of ancient civilizations without advanced instruments or external influence. One of the most curious aspects of the Dendera zodiac is its suggestion of cyclical time, a concept that lies at the heart of many ancient cosmologies. Unlike modern linear calendars, the circular format of the Dendera zodiac implies a repeating cosmic cycle, possibly tied to the movement of the equinoxes or even galactic rhythms. The inclusion of the constellation of Aquarius, rare in Egyptian iconography, alongside more traditional symbols such as the scarab beetle, falcon-headed deities, and solar boats, reinforces the idea of a hybridized astronomical language. This unique fusion raises the possibility that the Dendera zodiac was not merely an artistic curiosity, but a deliberate codification of esoteric celestial knowledge. If we consider the ancient Egyptians' meticulous alignment of their temples and pyramids to celestial bodies, such as the precise orientation of the Great Pyramid to true north, and the alignment of its shafts to Orion and Sirius, then the Dendera zodiac may be understood as part of a larger network of star-based knowledge. Some theorists posit that the zodiac could have served as a guide for sacred rituals timed with specific cosmic events, or even as a key to unlocking temporal windows, moments in which spiritual or interdimensional contact was more easily achieved. Others go further, suggesting that the entire temple functioned as an astronomical observatory or a kind of star map encoded in stone, with the zodiac as its centerpiece. The ancient Egyptian connection to the stars is well documented. They believed the soul ascended to the sky to become an imperishable star, joining the realm of Osiris in Orion and Isis in Sirius. The pyramid texts and coffin texts repeatedly refer to celestial navigation, describing the deceased king boarding a solar boat to sail across the heavens. The Dendera zodiac may be a visual representation of that same journey, a cartographic rendering of the soul's path through the cosmos. If so, it is not merely a reflection of astronomical knowledge, but a spiritual map,
designed to guide the initiated through celestial realms after death or during ritual states of altered consciousness. Interestingly, some interpretations of the zodiac suggest it encodes knowledge of the Great Year, the 26,000-year precessional cycle of Earth's wobble, which affects the position of stars over millennia. This idea, popularized by figures such as Schwaller de Lubitsch and later Graham Hancock, proposes that the ancient Egyptians possessed an awareness of long-duration astronomical cycles and may have encoded this knowledge symbolically. The positioning of the constellations within the zodiac might correspond to a specific epoch in Earth's celestial history, possibly marking an age of cataclysm, rebirth, or divine contact. If true, the Dendera zodiac is more than a calendar. It is a cosmic time capsule, whispering the secrets of ages long past. Skeptics argue that the zodiac is a product of Ptolemaic influence, a blend of Greek and Egyptian ideas reflecting a later Hellenized Egypt. While this dating may be accurate in terms of when the zodiac was carved, it does not account for the possibility that the knowledge it encodes is far older. As with so many aspects of Egyptian culture, the surface expression may be younger than the wisdom it preserves. Oral traditions, priestly lineages, and lost texts could have transmitted star lore across generations, eventually finding symbolic expression in the Dendera ceiling. The presence of zodiacal figures, otherwise unknown in traditional Egyptian iconography, like the depiction of Pisces or Sagittarius, suggests an intentional merging of astronomical systems rather than a random artistic borrowing. There is also the question of technological influence. Some fringe researchers speculate that the precision and complexity of the zodiac's astronomical content could hint at contact with advanced civilizations, whether terrestrial or otherwise. While mainstream academia dismisses such ideas, the persistence of star maps, sky-obsessed myths, and the Egyptians' relentless orientation of their monuments to celestial targets invites a reconsideration. Could the Dendera zodiac be a remnant of a lost civilization's astronomical archives? Or might it serve as evidence of a forgotten epoch in which knowledge of the cosmos was far more advanced and perhaps more connected to spiritual evolution than we currently understand? Even within the symbolic framework of Egyptian religion, the zodiac's significance is striking. It links the divine to the celestial, the human to the eternal. Hathor herself, the goddess to whom the temple is dedicated, was associated with the Milky Way, sometimes depicted as a celestial cow, her body spanning the heavens. She was the goddess of love, music, and rebirth, but also of the sky. The placement of the zodiac within her temple may indicate that the map of the stars was also a map of divine order, a reflection of cosmic harmony that the soul could align with through initiation, ritual, and death. In the end, the Dendera zodiac remains a riddle. It challenges us to expand our understanding of Egyptian cosmology and consider the possibility that what we call mythology may in fact preserve glimpses of a deeper lost science, a language of the stars spoken in stone. Whether it was a calendar for marking agricultural cycles, a ritual clock for temple ceremonies, or a multi-dimensional map for navigating the cosmos, one thing is certain. The ancients saw in the sky not just patterns of light, but signs of meaning, guidance, and destiny. As we gaze up at the same stars today, the Dendera zodiac reminds us that the search for our place in the universe is as old as civilization itself.
Chapter 9. Hieroglyphics Out of Time. Among the many mysteries etched into the walls of ancient Egypt, few have sparked as much controversy as the anomalous hieroglyphs found in the temple of Seti I at Abydos. Tucked away in the ceiling beams of this ancient sanctuary are what appear to be astonishing depictions, forms that resemble a modern helicopter, a submarine, an airplane, and other mechanical objects. To the untrained eye, they are simply fascinating curiosities. But to those who have studied ancient cultures, these out-of-place hieroglyphs raise unsettling questions. Are these merely the result of erosion, overlapping inscriptions, or damaged carvings? Or do they point to something far more profound, evidence that the ancient Egyptians may have been witnesses to,
or even in contact with technology far beyond their time. The site in question, the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, was built more than 3,000 years ago during the New Kingdom period. Revered as a sacred location, Abydos was one of the holiest sites in Egypt, associated with the cult of Osiris, the god of resurrection. Deep within the temple, a series of hieroglyphs appears to depict unmistakable, modern-looking craft. At first glance, one can discern the silhouette of what resembles a helicopter, complete with rotor blades and tail rotor. Next to it, shapes that appear to be submarines or flying saucers are seen, along with what looks eerily like a futuristic aircraft. These images are not displayed prominently or celebrated with inscriptions. They are subtle, almost hidden, as if meant to be discovered only by those with careful eyes. Mainstream Egyptologists argue that these glyphs are a result of a common ancient practice called palimpsest, in which older inscriptions were carved over by newer ones. As the plaster or stone eroded over centuries, both layers became visible, forming coincidental shapes that appear unusual to the modern viewer. According to this interpretation, the helicopter-like image is simply a convergence of two different cartouches, one from Seti I and another from Ramses II. Their overlapping symbols, degraded by time, accidentally created images that resemble modern machinery. This explanation is academically sound and supported by linguistic studies of the hieroglyph structure. However, skeptics of the palimpsest theory argue that the images are too precise to be random overlaps. The helicopter shape in particular displays an uncanny similarity to a real modern aircraft, with clearly defined rotor blades, a fuselage, and a tail rotor, all elements not easily explained away as accidental formations. The supposed submarine and flying saucer shapes also exhibit internal consistency in their forms, raising doubts among researchers who believe that natural degradation alone cannot account for their appearance. The debate then pivots between a call for rational skepticism and the possibility of an unexplored historical anomaly. Beyond Abydos, there are other examples of what some call anachronistic art in Egypt and around the world. In the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there is the famous depiction of what appears to be a large light bulb, known as the Dendera light, showing a serpent-like filament inside a bulb-shaped vessel, complete with what some interpret as electrical cables. Those scholars explain this as a stylized image of mythological importance. Alternative researchers see it as possible evidence of lost ancient technologies, perhaps powered by means unknown to us. The presence of such images across multiple sites suggests a pattern worth deeper examination, regardless of one's stance on their interpretation. The idea that the ancient Egyptians had access to advanced technology is not new. Ancient astronaut theorists propose that these anomalous hieroglyphs are remnants of interactions between early human civilizations and extraterrestrial beings or technologically advanced visitors from a forgotten age. According to this perspective, the gods described in Egyptian mythology, those who descended from the stars, who traveled in flying boats, and who wielded unimaginable power, may have been real beings misinterpreted through the lens of primitive language and understanding. The anomalous carvings then are not coincidences, but artistic attempts to record what these early people witnessed: flying machines, vessels of great power, and tools that defied natural explanation. One cannot ignore the broader context of Egyptian myth when considering this theory. The gods were often depicted traveling through the sky in chariots of fire or celestial boats. Ra, the sun god, rode across the heavens each day in his solar bark, only to descend into the underworld at night and fight off chaos. Thoth, the god of wisdom, was said to traverse realms and deliver knowledge to humanity from beyond. These are mythological motifs, yes,
but they bear a curious resemblance to modern accounts of flying crafts, multidimensional travel, and extraterrestrial messengers. Could it be that what the Egyptians described in symbolic language were not allegories, but misunderstood technological realities? Of course, such interpretations are not accepted within mainstream archaeology, which emphasizes cultural, symbolic, and religious explanations for Egyptian art. The standard model sees Egyptian glyphs as products of complex theology, social structure, and ritual significance, not as literal recordings of technological events. Yet the sheer number of ancient depictions around the world that defy conventional understanding has led many to question whether we are overlooking vital clues left behind by civilizations more advanced or more connected than previously imagined. Further complicating the picture is the precision with which ancient Egyptian monuments were constructed. The Great Pyramid, for example, aligns almost perfectly with true north and is built with tolerances that modern engineers find difficult to replicate. The stone blocks, some weighing dozens of tons, were cut with such exactitude that not a blade of grass fits between them. The tools found in archaeological digs, copper chisels, and dolerite pounding stones, seemed woefully inadequate to account for such feats. Could there have been another method, perhaps sonic technology, anti-gravity, or something entirely unknown to us? In this light, the anomalous glyphs at Abydos might be more than curiosities. They could be fragments of a forgotten language, remnants of encounters with technologies or beings erased from history, intentionally or by the erosion of time. Whether the result of palimpsest or something more, their presence challenges the accepted narrative of human development. They urge us to consider that the past may not be as linear or as isolated as we have been taught. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Perhaps these images are indeed the result of overlapping texts and artistic coincidence, but the very fact that they resemble modern technology with such clarity is itself telling. Human consciousness has always sought to represent what it observes. If the ancients saw things that resembled machines, whether of divine, terrestrial, or otherworldly origin, they would have recorded them in the only language they had, symbols carved into stone, preserved for millennia. In the end, the hieroglyphs at Abydos remain a mystery. Whether the product of erosion, forgotten knowledge, or ancient contact, they stand as silent witnesses to a civilization whose understanding of the world and perhaps the cosmos may have been deeper than we have yet imagined. As we continue to unearth and decode the relics of the past, we are reminded that history is not only written by the victors, but shaped by the limits of our own perception. And in those limits, the past still whispers secrets waiting to be heard.
Chapter 10. The Legacy of Thoth and Atlantis. In the heart of ancient Egyptian mythology stands a figure shrouded in mystery and reverence. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, writing, and sacred knowledge. He was the divine scribe, the keeper of time, the inventor of language and mathematics, the measurer of the heavens, and the guardian of esoteric secrets. Yet what sets Thoth apart from other deities is not only his cosmic role within the Egyptian pantheon, but the persistent claim found in ancient texts and esoteric traditions that he did not originate from Egypt itself. According to various sources, both canonical and occult, Thoth came from a land lost to the sea, a place known by many names, the island of Kem, the primordial homeland, or in the Greek tongue, Atlantis. This assertion, often dismissed as myth or allegory, opens the door to a provocative hypothesis that the roots of Egyptian civilization lie not in the Nile Valley alone, but in a lost world that predated the flood, a world that perished beneath the ocean yet transmitted its knowledge through survivors like Thoth. The earliest Egyptian legends make veiled references to a time before time, an epoch when the gods walked among men, and the order of the world was established by beings of immense wisdom and power. Thoth is said to have been present at the creation of the heavens and earth,
acting as the architect of divine law and the cosmic balance known as Ma'at. He taught mankind how to speak, how to write, how to heal, and how to measure both time and space. The tools he brought, language, astronomy, medicine, and sacred geometry, are the very foundations of civilization. But where did he learn them? The suggestion that Thoth came from Atlantis, or a similarly advanced pre-Diluvian civilization, has been proposed by many esoteric traditions, most notably in the so-called Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, a controversial and symbolic text attributed to the deity himself. Though of uncertain origin, the tablets describe Thoth as a high priest scientist from Atlantis who fled the sinking of his homeland, journeyed to Egypt, and established a new center of wisdom there. In these texts, Atlantis is portrayed not as a mere myth, but as a highly advanced culture, rich in both spiritual and technological achievement. Its people, the Atlanteans, were said to possess deep knowledge of the universe, mastery over energy, and the ability to manipulate matter through vibration and frequency. The fall of Atlantis, according to the narrative, was due to a moral decline, a deviation from divine law, and an obsession with power. As the island sank beneath the waves, Thoth led a group of initiates to safety, settling in the land that would become Egypt, or Kem, the ancient name for the Black Land of the Nile. There he began the long process of rebuilding civilization, encoded in temples, pyramids, and texts that would survive millennia. The implications of this narrative are profound. If true, it suggests that Egyptian civilization was not born spontaneously, but instead a legacy civilization, an heir to a much older world destroyed by cataclysm. This concept aligns with various global flood myths and oral traditions, from the Sumerian tale of Ziusudra to the biblical story of Noah, and even the legends of the Hopi and Mayan peoples. All speak of a great flood that wiped out a previous age of humanity, followed by the transmission of knowledge from divine or semi-divine beings to the survivors. Thoth, in this context, is more than a god. He is a memory, a personification of that ancient knowledge carried across the deluge. Mainstream archaeology has long resisted the notion of a lost advanced civilization predating Egypt, citing lack of physical evidence. Yet anomalies continue to emerge. The erosion patterns on the Great Sphinx, for instance, suggest it may be thousands of years older than traditionally believed, exposed to heavy rainfall inconsistent with Egypt's arid climate since 2500 BCE. This supports the theory that monumental architecture may predate the Pharaonic era, possibly extending back to a pre-flood time. Could Thoth, or those who followed him, have been responsible for these primordial structures? And if so, what other traces of this lost world lie buried beneath the sands? Thoth's influence permeates the deepest levels of Egyptian culture. He is the divine recorder of the Book of the Dead, the one who weighs the hearts of the deceased and inscribes the results in the Great Book of Judgment. He is also credited with the invention of hieroglyphs, a script not just for communication, but for transmitting spiritual truths. Each symbol carried layers of meaning, phonetic, pictorial, and energetic. It was a language of vibration, possibly reflecting a deeper understanding of the resonance between sound and matter. Some researchers speculate that the knowledge embedded in hieroglyphs and temple architecture may encode frequencies capable of influencing consciousness or even interacting with the quantum field. If this is so, then Thoth's gifts were not just intellectual, they were vibrational tools, remnants of a science far beyond modern understanding. The Hermetic tradition, which emerged in Greco-Roman Egypt and later influenced Renaissance alchemy, identified Thoth with the figure of Hermes Trismegistus, a fusion of Greek and Egyptian wisdom. The Hermetic texts claim to transmit ancient truths about the cosmos, the mind, and the process of spiritual transformation. As above, so below, a phrase attributed to Hermes, reflects the fundamental Hermetic principle of correspondence between the macrocosm and microcosm, a concept also implicit in Egyptian temple design, which mirrored the stars above in stone below. Could this principle have been inherited from Atlantis, preserved by Thoth and his disciples as the core of an ancient metaphysical science? If Thoth was indeed a survivor of a lost civilization, then the temples of Egypt are more than places of worship. They are time capsules, repositories of knowledge encrypted in myth, symbol, and geometry. The great libraries of Egypt, most famously the Library of Alexandria, may have once held texts tracing this lineage. Some believe that beneath the Sphinx, or within undiscovered chambers near the pyramids, lies the fabled Hall of Records, a vast archive said to contain the full history of Atlantis, Thoth, and the pre-flood world. While no such chamber has yet been conclusively discovered, the persistence of this legend across cultures suggests that humanity may still be in possession of fragments of a forgotten legacy. As our technological and spiritual capacities evolve, we are beginning to decode the symbolic language of the ancients in new ways. The notion of vibrational healing, sacred geometry, quantum consciousness, and unified field theory all point back to concepts long embedded in ancient traditions. Thoth's teachings, filtered through centuries of myth and metaphor, may hold the key to bridging the gap between science and spirit, matter and mind. He stands not only as a god of Egypt's past, but as a symbol of the hidden potential of humanity, our ability to remember who we were, understand who we are, and envision who we might become. In contemplating Thoth and the possible Atlantean origin of Egyptian civilization, we confront the boundaries of our historical narrative. Are we the first advanced civilization on Earth, or merely the latest in a cycle of rise and fall, memory and forgetting? Thoth's legacy urges us to consider that history is not a straight line, but a spiral, a sacred geometry of civilizations rising from the ashes of the last, each time bearing fragments of ancient light. And perhaps, buried in myth and stone, we will one day recover the full brilliance of that light again.
Chapter 11. DNA of the Pharaohs, Blood of the Stars. In recent years, advances in genetic analysis have allowed scientists to peer deep into the biological past of ancient civilizations. Among the most controversial and provocative findings are those concerning the DNA of the Egyptian pharaohs, rulers long enshrined in myth, divine symbolism, and reverence. These monarchs were not just political leaders, they were considered gods on earth, intermediaries between the human world and the divine realms. With the rise of genetic technology, researchers have begun to examine their preserved remains, mummified bodies entombed for millennia, to uncover their biological origins. What has emerged is a puzzle that challenges conventional history and invites speculation of a more mysterious, perhaps even cosmic lineage. The results show genetic markers that differ markedly from the modern Egyptian population. In many cases, the mummies exhibit haplogroups associated not with North Africa, but with ancient Eurasia and the Near East. Some even contain sequences that are rare or anomalous in the context of human genetic databases. Could the pharaohs have been the bearers of a forgotten bloodline? And if so, what was the origin of this blood? Was it purely terrestrial, or does it point to something otherworldly? The notion of the divine bloodline has always permeated the mythology and ideology of ancient Egypt. From the earliest dynasties, the pharaoh was believed to be a direct descendant of the gods, born of a union between divine beings and humans. In the famous myth of Osiris and Isis, the child Horus is conceived miraculously, and it is he who becomes the archetype of the pharaoh. This belief was not symbolic, it was ritualized, institutionalized, and carried out through carefully orchestrated royal lineages. Incestuous royal marriages, brother and sister unions, were practiced not merely for political consolidation, but to preserve what was considered divine genetic purity. The pharaoh's body was regarded as sacred, his blood as holy. Now, with the aid of modern science, we may be on the verge of understanding what made that blood so unique. A 2017 study conducted by the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, analyzing the genomes of over 90 ancient Egyptian mummies, revealed that the ancient Egyptians, particularly the elite, shared more genetic affinity with Near Eastern and Anatolian populations than with the modern Egyptians living in the Nile Valley today. This finding was surprising, but it only scratched the surface. Other independent genetic investigations, particularly those focusing on royal mummies such as Tutankhamun, Akhenaten, and Amenhotep III, have revealed even more astonishing anomalies. The Y-DNA haplogroup found in Tutankhamun's remains, for example, has been linked to Western European lineages, specifically R1b, which is virtually absent in modern Egypt but prevalent in parts of Europe.
While this could be the result of ancient migrations or intermixing, the consistency of these Eurasian markers among multiple pharaonic mummies suggests the existence of a distinct, long-maintained genetic line, possibly introduced from an unknown source far earlier than traditional models account for. Yet some results have proven even stranger. Certain mitochondrial DNA sequences recovered from royal mummies show mutations that are exceedingly rare or not currently documented in modern humans. These unexplained genetic signatures have sparked wild speculation, ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. Some propose the existence of an ancient, now extinct human population that interbred with early Egyptian dynasties. Others suggest that the anomalies point to a non-human element, an interstellar legacy, the so-called blood of the gods, preserved within a priest-king elite who ruled not only by divine right, but by virtue of a truly different genetic heritage. This idea, while fringe, is not new. Esoteric traditions, including theosophy and Hermeticism, have long claimed that early human civilizations were influenced or seeded by beings from other worlds or dimensions, entities known in various cultures as the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, or the Watchers. In these narratives, the pharaohs are not simply human rulers, but hybrids, part god, part man, tasked with guiding humanity in a forgotten golden age. The myths of Egypt seem to reflect this idea. Thoth, the god of wisdom, is said to have created humanity by means of magic and sacred geometry. Osiris descended from the heavens to civilize the people of the Nile. The very title, Son of Ra, implies a celestial paternity, a claim that, if taken literally, transforms the pharaoh from a mortal king into a genetic anomaly, one perhaps engineered for a divine purpose. Skeptics dismiss such theories as pseudo-history, pointing instead to the fluid and dynamic nature of human migration in antiquity. The Nile, after all, was a cultural artery through which flowed peoples from Africa, the Levant, and Mesopotamia. Yet even this explanation struggles to account for the consistency and concentration of rare haplogroups found specifically in the royal mummies, as well as the physiological peculiarities noted in artistic depictions of certain pharaohs, especially the 18th dynasty's Akhenaten and his offspring. Elongated skulls, narrow torsos, and unusually shaped eyes in statues and reliefs have been interpreted by some as stylized representations, but others believe they reflect real phenotypic traits, perhaps expressions of a rare or even manipulated genome. The idea that humanity's past may include episodes of contact with non-human intelligence is no longer confined to myth or science fiction. Recent developments in astrophysics and astrobiology suggest that the universe is likely teeming with life, and that intelligent civilizations, some vastly more advanced than ours, could have been visiting Earth for millennia. If such contact occurred in prehistory, would not the most powerful and spiritually inclined civilizations, like ancient Egypt, have preserved these encounters in their myths, their rituals, and perhaps even their bloodlines? Could the pharaohs have been more than just rulers? Could they have been biological vessels of an ancient cosmic inheritance? Today, these questions remain open. The full genomic sequencing of all royal mummies has not yet been completed or made public, and the analysis of ancient DNA is fraught with challenges: degradation, contamination, and the limited number of viable samples. Nonetheless, the data we do have points to an undeniable conclusion. The pharaohs were biologically different. Whether that difference is the result of ancient interbreeding, unknown human migrations, or something more extraordinary is still a matter of debate. But one thing is clear: the divine bloodline of Egypt was more than just a religious metaphor. It was a reality inscribed in bone, encoded in DNA, and preserved through centuries of ritual and secrecy. As science continues to unlock the secrets of ancient genomes, we may one day confirm what the ancient Egyptians always believed: that their kings were descended from the stars. Whether that descent was poetic, symbolic, or literal remains to be seen. But the quest itself, the merging of myth, biology, and cosmic speculation, may lead us not only to a clearer understanding of the pharaohs, but to a deeper realization of our own origins. For if the rulers of old were indeed the bearers of a star-born legacy, then perhaps humanity too carries within its genetic memory a fragment of the infinite, a silent code waiting to awaken.
Chapter 12. The Message of Time. Across the golden sands of Egypt, beneath the shadows of pyramids that have defied time, An ancient voice seems to whisper from stone and symbol alike. It is a voice not bound by language or culture, but one that speaks through geometry, alignment, myth, and monument. As we study the remains of this once mighty civilization, we begin to realize that what the Egyptians left behind was not merely an echo of their own greatness, but perhaps a deliberate transmission, a message encrypted in time, waiting for the right eyes, the right minds, the right moment to be understood. Perhaps they knew that their works would endure, that their myths would survive fires, floods, and empires, and that one day, a future humanity, one fractured by forgetfulness, would look back and rediscover something long buried within itself. The pyramids, especially those at Giza, are more than tombs. Their placement, proportions, and celestial alignment suggest a deeper purpose. The Great Pyramid's alignment to true north is nearly perfect, and its dimensions encode ratios that correspond to planetary measurements and constants, such as pi and the golden ratio. These are not coincidences, nor the result of primitive engineering. Such precision implies intent, a will to preserve something fundamental, something timeless. What if these structures were not merely architectural marvels, but instruments of transmission, designed to speak across the ages through the universal language of mathematics and form? What if they were not built to glorify kings, but to anchor a memory of who we once were? Myths, too, carry the imprint of this intent. The stories of gods descending from the heavens, of cosmic battles, divine orders, and cycles of death and rebirth all resonate with archetypal power. They appear again and again, not only in Egyptian tradition, but in the mythologies of every ancient culture, from the Sumerians and Hindus to the Mayans and the Dogon. These are not random fables. They are structured systems of symbolic knowledge, encoding cosmological, metaphysical, and even scientific truths. The tale of Osiris, dismembered and resurrected, echoes in every story of fall and redemption. The weighing of the heart by Thoth is not only a religious ritual, it is a metaphor for balance, justice, and spiritual evolution. The boat of Ra that sails across the sky by day and descends into the underworld by night is not just a poetic cycle, it is a map of consciousness, of celestial motion, of transformation. Why would such a civilization expend so much effort to record these stories in stone, to preserve them in such monumental permanence? Perhaps they understood that civilizations rise and fall, that time consumes empires but not truth. Perhaps the Egyptians saw themselves not as the culmination of human history, but as its stewards, guardians of a legacy inherited from an earlier world, one nearly lost to memory. In this view, their temples, their glyphs, and their astronomical alignments are not just cultural expressions, but relics of a forgotten science, a sacred technology meant to outlast the cycles of collapse and rebirth. In this sense, Egypt is not merely ancient, it is eternal. And its message was never only for its contemporaries, but for us. Some scholars, mystics, and alternative researchers suggest that Egypt's monuments were designed to awaken memory, not just inform. That their architecture and symbols act like keys, capable of unlocking latent knowledge within human consciousness. The idea is radical but compelling, that we are not evolving toward complexity, but returning to it, remembering it, reassembling the pieces of a vast and shattered mirror. From this perspective, the question is not what the Egyptians knew, but how much we have forgotten. Their works are reminders of a time when the human mind was not divided between science and spirit, when the measurement of the stars was inseparable from the quest for truth, and when a temple was both a machine and a prayer. There is something hauntingly intentional about the permanence of Egyptian architecture. Unlike other ancient civilizations whose records were etched in fragile media, papyrus, wood, oral tradition, the Egyptians carved their knowledge into the bones of the earth itself.
granite, limestone, and basalt. These are not the materials of impermanence. They are the language of endurance. It is as if they knew their world would end, but their message could remain. As if they encoded their wisdom not for their children, but for descendants so distant in time they would be unrecognizable. We are those descendants, and as we awaken to the depth of their knowledge, the question they posed thousands of years ago begins to resonate. Who are we? Where do we come from? What have we lost? Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Egypt's message is not found in any text or temple, but in the silent weight of its presence. To stand before the Great Pyramid or gaze upon the inscrutable face of the Sphinx is to feel time collapse. The linear illusion dissolves, and we are confronted with something eternal, something that transcends chronology. In these moments, intuition stirs. Something in the blood remembers. A fragment of ancient recognition flickers in the soul. It is not nostalgia, it is a call, a whisper from the deep past asking us not only to marvel, but to listen, to decode, to reawaken. This message of time may be a warning. The cyclical nature of Egyptian mythology, with its emphasis on destruction and renewal, suggests an awareness of catastrophe, not just physical, but spiritual. Civilizations rise, grow arrogant, lose their connection to the sacred, and fall. The flood myths, the tales of divine wrath, and the recurring motif of judgment and restoration all point to this rhythm. Perhaps the Egyptians left their monuments as a lighthouse for future ages, a signal to guide survivors of collapse toward wisdom rather than ruin. Or perhaps it is an invitation, an open door to knowledge, to the stars, to our own inner divinity. Not a condemnation, but a challenge, to remember who we are and reclaim what we once knew. In the final analysis, the ancient Egyptians might not have seen time as we do, a linear progression of progress and decay. They may have seen it as a spiral, a sacred geometry of return, where each cycle offers the opportunity to recover what was lost and transform it. Their message then is both ancient and urgent. It is carved in stone, but spoken through silence. It is the riddle of the Sphinx, the light in the king's chamber, the unblinking gaze of statues that seem to watch and wait. We are not alone, not in the universe and not in our own history. We are accompanied by the echoes of forgotten worlds, the wisdom of silent teachers, and the memories encoded in stone, myth, and bone. Perhaps the Egyptians knew that we would forget, but they also believed that we would remember. And in their enduring monuments, in their myths that have survived millennia, they left a path, a map of light through the darkness of time. It is ours to follow.